Yeah, it's a pleasure to be able to speak to you today about what Jesus said about leadership and what it means to be a leader. Now, for those of you who don't know, I'm going to be a father in a few months, which honestly cannot wait for. And however, despite, being very excited about this, I do kind of go between the two extremes of feeling great joy and excitement, but also, the great panic on the other end when I think about, the responsibility and the kind of dedication required to, raise a child and, not to mess up too much. And to be honest, apart from serving on sort of the church leadership team, I've never really felt called into leadership. Like, I've never felt that urge to be a leader. Like, to be honest, it's far too much responsibility. But, with fatherhood getting closer and closer, I've, begun to reevaluate, kind of this calling and also what it means to be a leader. Because, to be honest, being a parent, from, outward, from watching other people do it, I've kind of started, you realise, being a parent is just like being a leader, except, instead of, say, leading an entire church or a company or a large group of people, all that responsibility, is focused on one or two children, which, seems a lot more terrifying. And to be honest, like me, a lot of people do not feel that they're called into leadership. Like, not everyone is meant to be, leading a church or their own company or, being taken over by Boris Johnson's job. But as Christians, I'm not so sure that this is something we can avoid. Like, leadership, I think, is part of our journey with God. And if you look through the Bible and look at what Jesus says about being a leader, these things don't just apply to people in leadership. They don't just apply to people at the top. They apply to all of us, and is, to be honest, something we should all aspire to do, really, to achieve. Like, if we look at Matthew chapter 20, verse 26, Jesus says, "But among you, it will be different. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant." And in Luke chapter 22, verse 26, Jesus also says, "But it is not this way with you. The one who is the greatest among you must become like the youngest, and the leader like the servant." It's clear, like Jesus says that serving is at the heart of leadership. We may not have to be, leaders, in the traditional sense, like, leading a church or something similar, but what we do need, whether we're leading a church or whatever, is a serving heart, a heart that cares for others, a God-focused heart, one that has, compassion and all of that. But it needs to be, a serving heart and one that is, God-focused. And to be honest, this is something that, if you look around, you're probably going to say to yourself, I've got that, But, this is probably something that we do have right now, but even if we're not, if we feel like we're leaders or not, we can look to other places in the Bible as well for examples of what it means to be a leader under God as well. Like, if we look in the Old Testament, there's a great number of examples of leaders we can look at. But when you can kind of compare these sort of Old Testament leaders or any other kind of sort of leader characters in the Bible with Jesus, you see that all of these people are flawed in some way, and at some point, along their journey, or at multiple times along their journey, they fail as a leader. Now, like, let's take a look at David, for example. Like, David wasn't born into royalty, like, or he was never really meant to be a leader, you know, like he was just I think it was like a humble farmer or a sheep herd. But David was chosen by God to be the next king of Israel after Saul, who, you know, was a not so great leader of Israel. And yeah, like David wasn't what you'd expect from a king, really. Like, yeah, a humble shepherd and the youngest of his siblings, and like a talented musician. Like, God chose David to be king, and a great king and leader David was. Like, he trusted and listened to God. He was kind and humble, and he often showed grace and compassion, which are all great qualities of a leader. Like, and David was a great king. He was a great leader right up until, you know, he slept with someone else's wife, then had the husband killed, and then which kind of eventually led to the end of his kind of kingdom. No? And yeah, and like I said, like David and all the other leaders mentioned in the Old Testament and throughout the Bible and throughout history, like, have failed at some point during their lives. But, you know, what about them makes them a good leader? Like, why do we, like, say, look up to David as this great king, this great leader? And it's all down to their trust and their faith in God. Like, Jesus, you know, even though he was God made flesh, like, he is God, Jesus, but he spoke and listened to God constantly, which, whenever I think about it, actually blows my mind. Like, yeah, he was God, yet he spent so much time in prayer and talking and asking God what to do. Like, before Jesus went to the cross, he spent an evening in the Garden of Gethsemane with God, like praying and pretty much begging God for another way, but also trusting God that his death, you know, was the only way to truly save humanity, and that was God's plan. If we look at Matthew chapter 26, verse 39, we see, "And he went a little beyond them, and fell on his face and prayed, saying, 'My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not as I will, but as you will.'" And then, as well, a couple of verses later, in verse 41, "He went away again a second time and prayed, saying, 'My Father, if this cup cannot pass away unless I drink from it, your will be done.'" Like, listen to that. He is asking, like, begging God, please, if there's another way, let's go with that. But if there's not, I'm going to submit to your will. Like, I'll, do as you ask, God. Which is, especially with what God's asking, is insane. Like, it's incredible. But yeah, and that really is the key to being a good leader, whether you're in actual traditional leadership, where you're running a company, a church, or country, or whatever. Like, it all comes down to it all comes down to your trust in God. You listen to God. You know, you can have all the right qualities. You can have a kind, serving heart. You can stand up to injustice. You can be honest and compassionate. But if you don't trust in God, if you don't listen to God, if you don't put God first, ultimately you will fail. And it's clear from, like, just reading about Jesus throughout the Bible and everything Jesus says and does, that this is key. Now, this isn't saying, you know, that if you trust in God, you won't fail. Like, we are human. Like, David trusted in God, but he was human, like us, and he made mistakes, big ones. But when we trust in God, when we listen to God, when we serve God, we are giving ourselves, the best partner to lead with us and to walk beside us on our journey as followers of Jesus. And that really, is what it means to be a leader under God. Like, it is, just trust God, listen to God, and thanks for listening.